What's going on, guys? It's your boy Tempo Trades. This is a re-upload, so if you already watched this video, you can just drop a like and get out. But if you are new, this is going to be going over one of the best trading months I've ever had. Before we get into the video, just want to throw up a disclaimer. Trading is not guaranteed. There's risk involved, all of that great stuff. I got to put this disclaimer up here for YouTube. So, all right, now let's get into the month. So this is the month I had, and again, for YouTube, I'm not saying that everybody could get this month just by following me or watching this video. I'm just sharing my results and giving tips, okay? Hopefully they don't get mad this time. But this is the month that I had in March. I'm going to talk about it, give some tips, and kind of explain what helped me become this consistent. Before we get into all that, I just want to say that I was not always this consistent. If you have never heard of me before, I used to trade options, and my first year, I lost a lot of money because I didn't know what I was doing. I traded VWAPs, EMAs, pattern trading, a bunch of different strategies until I figured out the current strategy that I trade now, and it's made me a lot more consistent and a lot more profitable. But I was probably just like a lot of you watching this video right now, losing thousands and thousands of dollars in the market. So I know exactly where you're coming from. So here it was the month of March that I had. I believe this is 15 green days and 2 red days in the month of March. I did have a handful of days where I didn't even take a trade, which is really important. Probably the first point that I will get into. But yeah, you could see Friday, March 6th, Monday, March 16th, the 17th, the 23rd, and the 27th. I did not take a trade. But then, I was on a really nice streak as well. Going into March all the way up until the loss on the 20th, I was on a 16-day win streak. So this streak even goes in a little bit into February. It took me almost the last 2 weeks of the month to even lose. So we were on a nice streak, man. We were on a really, really nice streak. And so let's go into a few points here. The first point is something I touched up on earlier, is you don't have to trade every single day. For me, what really, really helped me become profitable is having a mechanical checklist. So I'll bring my checklist up personally, and here's my mechanical checklist. So I have data, I have backtesting data, I have forward testing data that if I take a trade and it follows the rules on this checklist, that trade is going to have a very, very high win rate, and it's going to win way more than it's going to lose. Now, can it still lose? Of course. I take losses, as you can see. I do take losses, but if we're just playing probabilities when it comes to trading, these are the types of setups I want to risk my money on, right? So I try to follow this mechanical strategy, as closely as possible. And there was 5 days in March where I sat there for about 2 hours. I looked at the chart and I did not find a setup. I think every single day this month, besides the 27th, I was trading because I think the 27th I was traveling for a trip. But yeah, so the 17th, 16th, 23rd, and 6th, I was at my desk for 2 hours, and I actually had the discipline to not press any buttons. And obviously, in the moment, is that boring? Yeah, it's boring. I want to make money. Everyone wants to make money. You want to be in a trade, but you have to think of the bigger picture. Trading is more of a monthly or even yearly hobby rather than a day-to-day or a weekly hobby. So many people sit there and they'll take a loss and they'll sit there and be like, wow, I have to recoup this loss right now, today. I got to make that $300 back right now. But if they just kind of zoomed out a little bit and stepped back, they would understand that, this thing is a long-term hobby, or not even a hobby, but it's a long-term job. It's a long-term industry. I always say to my community, like, you're never going to look back and say, hey, what, like right now, for example, right? We're in April. I'm never going to say, hey, let me look back and think, what did I do last month on the 20th on Friday? No. All you're going to think about is, how did I do in March? How did I do in February? How did I do in January? How did I do in December? So think about that. When you're looking back zoomed out. You're never thinking about a specific day, a specific week. You're just generalizing how you did in the previous month. So now when you're in the moment trading, that's the same way you got to think. If you're red and there's no more trades available and you're outside of your trading window, you just got to go to the next day and think about it zoomed out. And if I follow my rules for the next 20 days by the end of this month, there's going to be a lot more green on this calendar than there is red. That's how you have to think about it, because so many traders just shoot themselves in the foot because they can't take a loss. So that is one of my main tips for you. If there's no trade available, don't take a trade. You don't have to take a trade every single day. It's not the end of the world if you're break even. Going break even sometimes and being flat is better than forcing a setup and ending red. Okay. Um, Tip number two is what you'll see here on my calendar is a lot of these green days just say one trade, and that's because I preach a one and done model. Um, a lot of the times in the past, I've tried, I've been up $500, I've been up $700 on an account, and I'll be like, damn, let me push it to 1,000, let me push it to this number, and that's when the greed comes in, and I take that next trade and I give back my profits, and then I'm upset that I gave back my profits, and then I tilt and spiral, and that whole kind of system keeps playing out over and over. So to fix that, what I did is I just implemented a daily goal. I trade 50K funded accounts for the most part, and I'm like, okay, what do I want to make on each and every account? For me, that's $200 to $300, because in my head, if I can if I can hit $200 on a 50K account and then copy trade that with 10 accounts, that's $2,000 on the day, and I'm more than happy with that. That's many people's weekly salaries, or even more than many people's weekly salaries. So that's kind of the way I think about it, and that's allowed me to not overtrade and kind of just trade in my window, look for my one high quality setup, end the day before I can make any more mistakes or give back profits. So a lot of these green days, you'll see it just says one trade. Because what happens is I trade in the 9:30 to 11 a.m. window, and then if I catch a green trade at 10 a.m. and I'm already done for the next hour, I'll just go to eval and answer questions in my community or in my stream. So that's kind of what I do, and it's helped my consistency and my win rate tremendously. And obviously, are there going to be days where I take a trade and it's green, and then another good trade appears and I don't take it and that works, and I would have been even more green? Yeah, that happens, and it is what it is, because that gets offset by the days where I take a green trade and then the next trade I would have taken doesn't work, and that means I would have given back my profits. So it's a give and take system. So you can't really think about it that way, or else it'll drive you crazy. Now, the second tip, you see some days, specifically the 5th and the 11th, you see that it says two trades. That means my first trade was a loss and my second trade was green, and my second trade was bigger than my first trade. Okay, so I have a 2 to 3 loss rule for my system. So I don't just stop. If my first trade's a loss, I don't stop. There's an argument to be had, and there's data and philosophy and stuff like that, but I am not a fan of doing this whatsoever. I think trading is a game of probability, and if I have a 70-75% win rate in my system, that means I'm going to lose 25% of the time. I'd rather take two chances at 75% of winning than just take one chance and that loses, and then I'm done for the day. Um, so that's kind of what I do. I have 2 to 3 losses depending how I feel after the second loss, or depending on the price action and all those external factors. I'll debate with myself and I'll be like, okay, do I take another trade? Do I just shut it down? What's the right thing to do here? Um, so yeah, just because your first trade is green, I see a lot of people struggle with this. Just because their first trade's green and they get hit with some adversity, they completely melt down, they lose their cool, they lose their psychology. And it's just very important just to say, you know what, this trade lost. Is it a good trade? If so, great. I'll journal it. Um, and that's it. I'm gonna move on to the next trade. The next opportunity should also have a really high chance to succeed, and like that's what I'm gonna do, and that's kind of how I see it. So that is tip number two. Tip number three, I mean, it's kind of a little tip, but probably don't trade. Like, you need to be very aware on days that are going to have low probability conditions. You could see that my big loss this month was March 20th. I lost 20,000, and I was 0-3. I lost 3 trades in a row, which sucks, which really really sucks. But what's special about this day, it's actually OPEX, okay? And I knew that going in. OPEX is the third Friday of every single month. It is when millions and billions of dollars of option contracts expire on the same day. Um, and usually, because of that, you see a lot of manipulation, a lot of poor trading conditions. And I knew that going in. And coincidentally, that's the day where I have my worst day of the month. So I would just say keep a mental note through your experience what days are better than others. Bad days include OPEX, bank holidays, half days, anytime Trump or Powell speaking, like things like this are usually going to give you bad trading conditions, and your edge and your win rate is not going to be as high as normal. So in that case, I mean, you could do two things. It's like either A, size down and be cautious, or B, just completely avoid those days. So it's just something to keep in mind to, again, make that win rate as consistent as possible. Okay, I'm trying to think of any other tips and examples. I guess another tip number 4, you definitely want to journal, man. You definitely want to journal. Journaling is boring. A lot of people find it boring, but it's necessary, especially if you're not profitable, so you can identify strategies and patterns in your trading. I meant to say tendencies and patterns in your trading. You can see what you're doing when things are going right. You can see if there's a pattern every time you're blowing your accounts. And you need to reflect and adapt. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. So if you're just going through the motions, never taking a moment and reflecting on what you're doing right and wrong, how are you going to expect to improve? So journal every single day, take a picture of the trade you take, write some notes down, what you think about the trade, write how much you won or lost, write all your trims down, just so you can look back. I would wait for a month, 3 weeks, gather some data, and then you can go back and reflect. But just do it, make it a part of your daily routine, and I think it will benefit you in the long term. So these are pretty much all the tips, guys. If you have any other questions, leave a comment. Again, YouTube, please don't be mad at me. Disclaimer, you know, trading is risky. I've lost a lot of money and I've made a lot of money, so this is not financial advice. YouTube, I love you. All right, have a good one, guys. Peace.